Thank you, Daniela. It is time for the headliner presented by Miller Lite. Our guest is former Tiger and current MLB Network analyst Carlos Peña. Carlos works for the MLB Network, and you can watch him across MLB Network's programming, including MLB Tonight, which airs 7 days a week. Now that we got that out of the way, let's officially welcome Carlos. And Carlos, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
It's really cool to join you guys. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to join you, as a matter of fact.
Now you're an analyst with MLB. The Tigers are going through a little bit of a rebuild. Unfortunately, you were on the team that lost 119 games. So you kind of know what Tiger fans are feeling. Your, I guess, general overview of where do you think the Tigers are at right now as a baseball team?
Well, they're in that first level, right, where you have to kind of the growing pains. It's difficult. It's a lot of a development going on, and sometimes you're going to lose your patience as a fan, and not only as a fan, but also as a player. It's hard to take the losses, but you have to have the big picture in mind. And now that doesn't mean that you don't go out there every single day expecting to win a ball game. However, fans' perspective, it's almost like you have to give the team enough room and these guys to just grow and come into their own. And sometimes that's easier said than done, and it requires a lot of patience, which maybe that's something that the Detroit fans do not want to hear. But there are a lot of great bright spots to look forward to. I mean, this team's stacked with talent.
Well, I know you talked about stack with talent. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but what's it like when you are in a rebuilding mode and you guys are losing more than you're winning? I know, like I believe Alan Trammell was your manager for most of your career here in Detroit. I mean, is it a toll on him? Were there ever points where because Tram's a Hall of Fame ball player, where you just wanted to say, "Hey, Tram, just calm down a little bit yourself"? I mean, we'll eventually get this right.
Remember, I told you about patience. Well, Tram had a
Right.
lot of it, and it was tested. And boy, he really went out every single day, early work, trying to work with every single player, kind of turning his back on the fact that the team had so many losses stacking up one after the other. And he was still with resilience. His resilience was just ridiculous because he would show up every day in the morning, early to work with the guys. And he would pretty much make appointments with every one of us, depending on the position, and work with us throughout the week, extra work. And it takes a lot of dedication because you're not getting the reward. You're not getting the W's. You're not getting the pat on the back. So hats off to Tram. He was one of my favorite managers. And today I value him more than possibly when we were actually playing for him. I can see how valuable he was in my career as a defender, as a hitter. So that was very necessary for me as a player. So that's why I told you earlier that not only the fans need to be patient, but also the players, they have to stick with the process, be process oriented. And that's going to serve them well in the long run.
When you look at the at Major League Baseball, you look at the Tigers specifically. Tigers started off pretty well, kind of stumbling right now against the White Sox and the Cleveland Indians. But Tarek Skubal made his debut. Casey Mize is making his debut against the White Sox. Pretty formidable club to make your Major League debut. But when you look at the young talent that they have, especially a Mize and a Skubal, I mean, as you said, what about pitching? Why is pitching so important? I know that's like a loaded question, but
Yeah.
if the Tigers can get their pitching right, suddenly this rebuild has been, accelerated quite a bit.
Well, that's precisely why I think Al Avila's doing everything he can to get innings and experience with these, get him out there, get a little taste of the big leagues under these circumstances right now that are very formidable, or strange, let's say, different, right? And it's not a 162 game season. The Tigers were off to a pretty good start, but now kind of like they came back to earth, and all of a sudden you have a little bit of room to say, okay, if we're going to test these guys, we're going to put them out there and just give them kind of like get him some seasoning. This is the perfect opportunity to do so. And that's what, when you look at Skubal and you look at Mize, this is precisely what they're up here to do. And boy, are they talented. They can really throw the baseball, but you have to give them the reps. You have to let them struggle. You have to let them adjust. And Sometimes that's not pretty to watch, but you must trust that process because it's part of their growth.
When what about pitching? Now, let's bring up Matt Boyd, the ace of the staff.
Mm-hmm.
He was lights out in spring training, in summer camp. He was lights out. The season starts, and all of a sudden, it looks like the bottom has dropped out. It to me, I guess, and you know this as a player, and this is just for
Mm-hmm.
me covering players for so many. It's almost like he's thinking too much and just not going out there and playing. If that makes sense. I mean, what have you seen? And I know it's limited because you cover the whole league. What do you think's going on with Matt Boyd?
Well, I'm going to include Boyd in this conversation, but it would go for Mize, it would go for school. But I just think that they have, it's not about thinking too much. I would say they're thinking about the wrong thing because you focus so much on trying to better your stuff. And in reality, I think you will expedite your progress and your growth if you focus on how to utilize your stuff instead of trying to make your stuff spin more or throw harder. How about focusing on the fact that it's not about better stuff, but using your stuff better? I utilize that phrase very often because I think it just rings true. I mean, I'm a hitter, and who better to tell you how to go about defeating a pitcher than a hitter? And what hurts me, right, as a hitter. So I think those are very valuable conversations where you have a pitcher talk to a hitter. So I'm coming from a hitter's perspective. Are you hiding your off-speed pitches? Are you making your off-speed pitches seem and look like the fastball? Are you speeding me up? And then you utilize that sense of me not having enough time to your advantage. Those are the type of conversations that I hope young pitchers are having. I certainly hope that the Tigers' young pitchers are having. Instead of worrying so much, is my curveball breaking hard enough? Do not rely on stuff so much. Start more relying on strategy and building a pretty good strategy. So that's what I think happens. You go lights out in spring training, and then all of a sudden you can't get the people you want. It's not that you forgot how to throw your curveball or your fastball. It's that maybe you're not utilizing it the right way. So I wish they would focus on strategy more than on stuff.
Wow, that's a really interesting point. Let's kind of turn our conversation now to a hitter. You were a young premier, up and coming hitter back in the day. Tigers have several players that they're really interested in. Isaac Paredes is already up right now. I know people are chomping at the bit to see Riley Green, whom I believe is a superstar in the making. And then Spencer Torkelson. My big thing, Carlos, is unleash the torque. I mean, fans are eager to see them. But what would you tell young hitters, especially young everyday players, about the process that they need to go through before they begin wearing that old English D?
Well, right away. I mean, we're talking about the pitchers making have this strategy on point. Same thing goes for the hitters. So we look at Torkelson, Green, Paredes. These guys have incredible hand-eye coordination. The power is there, especially when we're talking about Torkelson. He's got ridiculous power. So now what? Sometimes as hitters, if I had to go back in my career, I think I worked and worried too much about my mechanics, way too much. I spent so many hours in the cage. And when the game started, as soon as I made the first out, I would switch my mechanics. After I worked all day on the one that didn't work on my first at bat. You understand? It's a
Right,
waste
right,
of
right.
time to spend so much time on mechanics. So by the same token, I would like young hitters, I would say, let's focus on an approach. Let's look for a pitch that you can be all over. Let's time it correctly. Let's get ready early enough for that fastball, for example, in the middle in part of the plate. Let's, instead of being so reactionary, let's be in the attack, right? Become predators, become hunters as hitters instead of trying to cover the entire plate. Let's be very discriminating for the pitch that we really want to hit. Those are the conversations I would be having with the young hitters instead of like, is your elbow up? Let's make sure your swing is, flat, or squish the bug. They don't use that anymore in the big leagues, but it used to be one of those things they used to say, right, when we were younger. Squish the bug.
Oh
Let's
yeah.
let's talk about strategy and approach more than mechanics.
Well, I'm right there with you, and I guess finally, my final question for you would be this: You're a ball player. You played in front of fans. How difficult would it have been for Carlos Pena, the player, to play under the conditions that Major League Baseball players are playing right now, where they're pretty much quarantined in their room, and then they go to the ballpark. They can sort of maybe touch their teammates if they want to fist bump them or high five them with an elbow or something, and then play in essentially an empty stadium.
It would be extremely difficult. I mean, keep in mind that when we were younger and we aspired to become Major League Baseball players, one of the things that attracted us, right? Especially, I'll speak for myself, but I know that a lot of people are on board with this. A lot of players are. We dreamt about playing in front of 50,000 fans in beautiful stadiums, packed houses. Imagine a player getting to your stadium, you see no one in the stands. That is difficult. That is difficult to adjust to. And then add the really draconian measures that Major League Baseball has set in place because of the situation. You know what I mean? So they're justified. They're trying to do everything they can to make sure everyone is safe. Think about having to go through all these protocols and rules and make sure that you keep them. That's also extremely difficult. Let alone we haven't even played a game yet. We haven't. This is
Right.
before we say play ball. So I think playing the game is probably the easiest part, but getting over those big parts, right, of no one in the stands and all the protocols. Goodness, that is the biggest adjustments that players have had to make. I know I would have had a hard time, even though players are resilient. As you can see, we're on the way, and they're out there having fun and doing what they love.
How long do you think it's going to take for this team? I mean, let's face it, Carlos, their minor league system, which was always in the low 20s, is now rated in the top 5 or 6, or even heck, MLB Pipeline has them as the best farm system. How long do you think it's going to take before the Tigers are where we all want them to be, competitive again?
Well, it's hard to say specifically, but if I were to follow the pattern on how players develop, we're talking about 3 years. 3 years where you could see these guys really come and start becoming comfortable in the major league level and performing at the level that they're capable of performing. And that's we're talking about as a group, right? And that's why I give it the 3 year, at least 3 years for them to pretty much come together and everyone become what we know and what we expect that they can become in the big leagues. Is that a long time? No, I don't think it is. I think it'd be fun watching these guys develop the process. And if we get surprised early, no one's going to complain. But get your mindset that it's going to be at least 3 years before you see these guys truly become the team that everyone expects them to become eventually.
Well, I want to go an overview right now. Obviously, COVID-19 has changed everything. Baseball without fans, and I'm just kind of curious. How has this changed what you do right now? Have you adjusted? I mean, how different is this environment for you?
Well, this is so strange. These times we're living in are just out of this world, really. And eventually, what you end up doing is you try to have this mindset of prudence, right? And you say, okay, I'm going to be cautious and not fearful. And you pretty much take that approach with everything you do. It's been difficult to adjust, even just physical activity. After I retired, I'm still a workout buff. I like fitness, Well, it's not that easy now to go to the gym, for example. But guess what? You can grab a bike, go biking. You can go running. So you find ways to adjust. But the toughest part has been doing this from home. I want to be in the studio. I
Right.
want to be, breaking swings down and looking at games at the MLB Network. Yet we're doing it from home. Hopefully soon, the next couple of weeks, I'll be able to get down to the studio. But it has been difficult. Let me tell you something personal.
Mm-hmm.
How about just school with the kids? Oh my goodness, that's
Right.
extremely
Right.
difficult. They just started last week, so we're busy parents, especially in the morning, trying to navigate virtual learning. But it also has helped us to be closer to our children. So we're trying to stay positive, and we do everything we can to be cautious but not fearful, and keep on going forward. Hopefully, soon all this will be over.
Right, I'll tell you, draconian. I can tell you studied electrical engineering at Northeastern. My gosh, I mean, you're throwing words out there that whoa, whoa, all right, back off, Carlos. I know you're teaching your kids here, but all right, we're just talking baseball, buddy.
I just learned that word with my 10-year-old there in social studies. How about that? I
Really?
used
Okay.
it right away. Apply the
Yeah,
vocabulary.
use it in a sentence, please. That was great. That
Yes.
was great.
Yes.
All right, that'll do it for the headliner presented by Miller Lite. Miller Lite, it is the original light beer, only 96 calories. It tastes delicious, and it is available for delivery. Carlos Pena, what a great guy. Back to you, Daniela.